Hi, this is Brandon Smitley. I got another Q&A session from the Facebooks here. This question comes from Jimmy Brooks. He asks, power cleans, when, why, are they a good choice for accessories? I had to ask him to elaborate a little bit in terms of reference to whether he was referring this to powerlifting, which he said indeed yes, and how and when would a powerlifter use them. This is a bit of a tough question. It's probably going to depend on who you ask, and it's also probably going to depend upon the athlete of which we're speaking with. I would say if you're an elite level powerlifter or higher, you're wasting your time probably with the weightlifting movements. And I'll explain that here in a minute why. If you're not an elite level powerlifter, so you're someone that's more of an intermediate to beginner, you only do 1-2 meets a year, powerlifting, you're not like gung-ho, trying to be awesome, get into rankings, and it's not your bread and butter, but you do like to compete a couple times a year, you can probably put some weightlifting movements into your programs. Now to get a little bit more specific, let's look at the differences between a deadlift and a clean. And I'm not even going to look at the power clean. I'm just going to look at the clean and the deadlift, the full movement. Because I know you specifically asked about power cleans, but I'm just going to talk about cleans and power cleans. But for this moment, this generalization, just cleans. In the deadlift, we're going to be speaking of just conventional here, because those are the most similar. When you look at positioning of the shoulder, let's just talk about positioning first. With the conventional deadlift, your shoulder is going to be about right over the bar, maybe a little bit over, maybe a little bit behind. That's going to vary from lifter to lifter. But generally speaking, we want to see that armpit and that shoulder is directly over the bar. Your weight's on your heels, your back, your hips are still as high as you can get them without being flat, if that makes sense. So just enough to create tension on the hamstrings, that'll pull that flex out of the bar. And then lats tight, big air, all that kind of stuff. So your shoulders are right over. Where with the power clean, or even the clean, the weightlifter's gonna have those heels, and their hands are gonna be a little bit wider. They're not gonna be directly in. They're gonna be a little wider because to think when they have to catch and receive the weight, they've got to be in that front squat position. Great example, right? So when they're here, if their hands are narrow, they don't want to receive the bar here. They're going to want to have their hands outside their shoulders. That way it's in a good position to hit the jerk. So with that said, usually their shoulders are going to be a little bit further behind the bar. And that's because the initial pull is not going to be all out 100%. They're going to get maybe 80% of that pull. 85, something like that. Just understand that the first pull is not 100%. Deadlift, there is no difference between the first and second pull. There's only one pull that's from the floor, and you gotta lock that sucker out. So you're gonna be pulling with 100% speed off the floor as long as the slack is out. If you don't pull the slack out, you're gonna throw your back out. So pull the slack out of the bar, and then you can pull with 100% into the bar. With clean or power clean, you cannot do that from the floor. All the power and the 100% aspect of the pulls are covering the second pull, which is when you pass the knee and get those hips through. And that's what we like to really emphasize in sports. And usually when you're teaching people how to weight lift, triple extension, triple extension. Hips, knees, ankles, all triply extended, right? So that's the two big differences between the movements. Then obviously you're receiving the clean, but you're not going to receive the deadlift. So with that said, understand the two differences. Now that we know that those two differences exist, and that makes a little more sense, and I know some people don't understand that. Generally, people think they kind of go hand in hand, and I don't know if that's because of starting strength and some Ripto stuff, or if it's just because they look similar. But there are differences, and they need to be acknowledged from a trainee perspective. That rate of force development and even the velocity curve in those two movements are entirely different. A speed deadlift is different than a clean or a power clean because of those pulls and a little bit different positioning and such. So understand that. Now that I've rambled on enough about that, why I would say no is because of those, but also because of one, specificity, And two, we're talking about trying to receive weights in a weightlifting movement where we don't really need to receive weights in powerlifting. So you're going to teach your body to drop underneath that bar incredibly fast and try to receive that weight and then stand up with it. Are you going to jerk it if you're a powerlifter? If your shoulders are really beat up, you probably going to have a hard time just receiving it, let alone getting it overhead in the right position. If you can do all that stuff, that's great. That means you're pretty athletic, you're pretty mobile. But that doesn't mean it's going to directly help your total. You would probably just be better off breaking up your work into deadlifting, speed deadlifts, snatch grip deadlifts, front squats, overhead presses, using some aspects of the weightlifting world to increase your powerlifting total based upon your needs analysis or weaknesses. Where with the weightlifting, obviously if you can deadlift more, you're probably going to have a better chance of being a better weightlifter, but not necessarily. A 600 pound deadlifter versus a 300 pound deadlifter, I'm willing to bet the 600 pound deadlifter, given that they both have no knowledge of how to truly clean weight, is going to clean more than 300 pound deadlifter. We can probably all agree with that. However, I'll say an example where a few summers ago I was interning at Force Fitness and Performance in Bloomington with Will Fleming. He was teaching me how to weightlift, and part of my internship was that I had to train with his weightlifters, which I thought was awesome. That's a very unique internship experience that I think a lot of interns could be very humbled by. And I was actually getting ready for a powerlifting meet. He said, well, we'll let you do your meet, but you also have to do a weightlifting meet with us. And I said, okay, that's fine. And basically the rules were I could no longer squat. I could only front squat. So my deadlifting basically took a back seat and my squatting took a back seat. But I could front squat, and that was basically where my clean and my snatch and some other variations, position specific. But here I was at a 500 pound deadlifter with a conventional stance, and my best clean going into that had trained with him ever that I've ever done with myself was 205. I was in college at some point. And I never jerked it either, mind you. He had some lifters that are 16, 17, 18, maybe 19 years old, works with a lot of junior kids. He's got a couple that are in some Olympic training camps up in Michigan right now. Phenomenal athletes and lifters. These kids can probably barely, if they're lucky, maybe deadlift 405, yet they can out clean and jerk me like it's their job. They can out snatch me like it's their job. One would argue that I am a stronger athlete, but I obviously can't display my strength into the technique and power that's required for weightlifting due to the position. So, with that said, just because you can deadlift more doesn't mean you're going to power clean anymore. There's a lot of technical proficiencies that come down to that, and that even though you would think it would have a higher rate of force development, it doesn't matter because the rate of force development is not as nearly important from the floor. So understand the technical aspects. And with training with his weightlifters, to finish that story off, I managed to clean and jerk 231 in the meet. So he took me from someone that could barely, clean 205 to someone that can clean and jerk 231 in a matter of 8 weeks. So now that I have all that done, I would say that with all that mentioned, that for the average powerlifter in terms of accessory work, I think the power clean is going to be a waste of your time. If you like doing it and staying athletic and just being a good overall well-rounded athlete, and you're not trying to really specialize in powerlifting, absolutely. You can still clean, but just understand that there are differences. And those differences are going to be not only changing your mechanics, but why there is a difference between a clean and a deadlift. Ideally, I would say if you're going to have a dual sport athlete, or you want to become a dual sport athlete, I would say learn to deadlift sumo for powerlifting, and then you would obviously clean in the clean stance or conventional. The reason I say that is because then you can understand the torso positioning better. You wouldn't be going back and forth between torso positionings between the two sports, and then reverting one back to the other and having to change back and forth. You got a drastically different stance, a drastically different setup on each one, and it's just plain cut and dry. Where you have one that's here and their hands are the closest you can get, and one where your feet are a little bit wider and heels are up and your hands are out. That's pretty similar pull. I think you also got to think in terms of recovery. A weightlifting movement is not super taxing, but it is taxing in terms of you've got to have that firing, and it's a very explosive movement. You've got to receive the weight. And if you don't have the familiarity with the lift to be really proficient in it, you're going to spend a lot of time headbutting yourself against the wall trying to get the positions and get everything right, where that time can be better served towards improving your positioning on your deadlift, or even towards other specific things in terms of accessory work, glute ham raises, reverse hypers, whatever, and being done. So I would say that it's not ideal, can be done if you're an elite level or higher. I would say save it for whenever you think your powerlifting career is on a downhill, or when you think you're done, and then begin to pick up weightlifting and take it from there and actually get into a meet. If you're going to have that long off season where you do some weightlifting movements, or a weightlifting meet, or just weightlifting training, go for it. It's awesome. I learned a ton whenever I decided to do that. I became much more proficient. It took me a long time to try to get into some positions. I still couldn't get in great positions with the snatch because of my shoulders and all the bench pressing, but it's very humbling. It gives you a newfound respect for those athletes and the kind of training they put in, the kind of numbers they lift, how quick they really are in terms of getting under the bar, and there's just something beautiful about weightlifting that powerlifting doesn't have, and I think a lot of that is just the athleticism and technique that it takes to be professionally skilled and very high level athlete at that. And let's face it, weightlifting's in the Olympics and powerlifting's not.